Champ down.
Yes, I didn't see him. What are you looking so sad about, Champ?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. That's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talking. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I was on a Bomber of the Month tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
Would you be on the tour?
What's happening, my people? It's Cash Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cash Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, the Four Kings fights. Okay, it's Monday, right back at the beginning of another big week of boxing history. The Four Kings fights. We're going to look at all 9 of the Four Kings fights today, and we're going to look at the background, the lead up to the fights, the fight, and then we're going to look at the aftermath of the fight, each one of them today. And we're also going to look at the trainers. All 4 Kings had excellent trainers. And time permitting, we're going to do the highlights of boxing history at the end today because we got a lot to get to. We're going to jump right into it. And at the end, if time permitting, we're going to look at some other great fighters from the 80s, other than the Four Kings, okay? But today, the Four Kings series. We'll take a deep dive into the Four Kings fights. There was 9 of them. Sugar Leonard Roberto Duran was the first Four Kings fight in 1980. And in 1989, the final year of the decade, Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran was the final fight of the series. They had 7 great fights in between. Okay, so let's get into it. The Four Kings series. We're going to start right out with the subject of the show today because we got a lot to get to. The Four Kings series. Now what? Okay, the Four Kings series. Now, boxing has witnessed its fair share of legends who have left an indelible mark on the sport's history. Now, among these legends, the Four Kings stand tall, each possessing a unique and captivating style that set them apart and made them icons in their own right. Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, Roberto Duran, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. These 4 names conjure memorable memories of thrilling battles and distinct approaches to the sweet science. Now let's take a look at these 4 legendary pugilists and explore their diverse styles. Okay, let's take a look at each of the 4 kings before we get into the fights, okay? First, Sugar Ray Leonard. That's a little brief look. Sugar Ray Leonard. And these styles continue to inspire and define boxing to this day. Okay, Sugar Ray Leonard, the maestro of versatility. Now, Leonard, often referred to as Sugar, was a master of versatility inside the squared circle. His style was akin to a musical symphony, seamlessly shifting between different rhythms and tones to keep his opponents off balance. Leonard possessed an exquisite blend of speed, footwork, and ring intelligence that allowed him to adapt to various opponents and situations. Leonard's slick footwork and lightning-fast reflexes made him a defensive virtuoso. He could slip punches with the ease of a dancer effortlessly, avoiding his opponent's attacks while creating opportunities for his own counterattacks. His offense was just as impressive, with sharp combinations and precise punching that kept his adversaries guessing. Sugar Ray Leonard. Thomas Hearns. How about the hitman, Thomas Hearns? Now, the hitman's thunderous power was all-time great level. Known as the hitman, Thomas Hearns was a force to be reckoned with, owing to his devastating punching power and imposing reach. Hearns had a remarkable ability to end fights with a single blow, making him a true knockout artist in every sense of the term. Hearns' style was defined by his extraordinary reach and a ferocious jab that he used to control the distance and set up his power shots. His right hand was like a sledgehammer, capable of turning the tide of a fight in an instant. Hearns often relied on his boxing acumen to keep his opponents at bay, utilizing his height advantage to maintain distance before unleashing his explosive power punches. The Hitman, Thomas Hearns. Okay. Roberto Duran. The Relentless Warrior. The Relentless Warrior. Now, if there ever was a boxer who embodied the spirit of a warrior, it was Roberto Duran. The Hands of Stone style was marked by its unyielding determination, tenacious aggression, and a cast-on chin that allowed him to absorb punishment and keep pressing forward. Duran was a master of infighting, a skill that allowed him to smother his opponents and work on the inside, weighing them down with a relentless barrage of hooks and body shots. His high-pressure style and unbreakable will made him a nightmare for opponents who couldn't match his intensity. Roberto Duran. And finally, the final four king, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Marvelous Marvin. There he is. The unyielding southpaw. Now, Hagler, often referred to as Marvelous, was a southpaw fighter, known for his iron chin, relentless pressure, and unmatched determination. Okay? Hagler's style was rooted in his ability to dictate the pace of a fight, break down opponents with relentless aggression, and unleashing devastating power shots. Hagler's southpaw stance provided a unique challenge for his opponents, as they had to adjust their game plan to counter his unorthodox angles. Now, his granite chin allowed him to absorb punches without flinching, enabling him to maintain his forward momentum and wear down opponents over the course of a fight. Okay, the four kings. Now let's talk about some of these four kings. We're going to talk about all 9 of the four kings fights. There were 9 of them. Now, these 4 legends left an indelible mark on the sport. With their distinct styles and memorable battles, Leonard's versatility, Hearns' power, Duran's relentlessness, and Hagler's unyielding determination each contributed to the rich tapestry of boxing history. These fighters didn't just win fights. They defined eras and inspired generations of boxers to come, proving that there is no single path to greatness in the world of boxing. Okay? The four kings. Now we're going to talk about some four kings fights. Okay? Now we're going to get to the four kings fights, all 9 of them. Hope everybody enjoying their holiday today. Yeah, I wasn't doing that. I decided to come on anyway. So here we go. The Four Kings series. Okay. Hope everybody had a good week. This is an extended weekend this week. Yep. Okay. Now, like I said, the first fight of the Four Kings series and the last one was the same too. First fight of the series was Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran 1. Leonard Duran 1. Let's get into that. Leonard Duran 1. Okay. Now, Leonard Duran 1 was billed as the Brawl in Montreal. The fight took place on June 20th, 1980 for the WBC and the Ring Welterweight Championship. Now, it took place at the Olympic Stadium in Montreal, Canada. The referee was Carlos Padilla Jr. Okay, let's get a little background of the fight. Background. Now, on May 9th, 1980, the highly anticipated fight between the undefeated reigning WBC champion, Sugar Ray Leonard, and former undisputed lightweight champion and the then number one ranked welterweight contender, Roberto Duran, was announced. Now, the fight, which was to take place a little over a month after its official announcement on June 20th, took place at Montreal's Olympic Stadium, the site where Leonard had captured the Olympic gold medal 4 years earlier. Okay? Now, going into the fight, both Leonard and Duran were two of the top fighters in the sport of boxing at the time. Leonard was perfect at 27-0 and had captured the WBC welterweight title the previous December after knocking out future Hall of Famer Wilfred Benitez. And then he made one successful title defense against Dave Boyd Green in March of 1980. Okay? Now, Duran had recently completed a 6-year run as undisputed lightweight champion before moving up to welterweight, where he compiled an 8-0 record before facing Leonard. Now, the fight was set to be the highest grossing in boxing history up to that point, okay? And both Leonard and Duran were set to make the biggest paydays in their careers at $9 million and $1.5 million respectively. You know, Leonard as the A side was getting the $9 million. Roberto was getting 1.5, okay? Now, Leonard came in as a 9-5 favorite. Now, just prior to the fight, both Leonard and Duran received health scares. Duran underwent a 2-hour heart exam, and after his EKG revealed an abnormality in his heartbeat, a cardiologist was called in and determined that the abnormality was completely common in a well-trained athlete, and Duran was cleared to fight. Okay? Now, Leonard, meanwhile, claimed that he had been stricken by a virus. So his trainer, Angelo Dundee, stated, if he had a virus, it wasn't that bad, or I would have heard about it. Bruce Gass, Boxing Jazz, and more in the building. What's up, Bruce Gass? We are going to talk about 4K, yeah, 9 million and 1.5. That was a big difference, wasn't it, Bruce? Roberto would have got a little more. But I know he had to in the second fight, you know, because he won that first one. But salute Bruce Gass. We're going to go through each of the 4 Kings fights. Okay, you know, of course, the first one was Leonard Duran won. So the fight, that was the back. We're going to look at the lead up to each fight, the fight, and then the aftermath. So that was the lead up to it, the background. So now let's talk about the actual fight between these two legends. They were both two of the top in the sport at the time when they had their matchup too. Okay, the fight. Now, in a hard-fought back-and-forth contest that went their full 15 rounds, Duran was the aggressor often throughout the fight, and he was able to earn a close, unanimous decision, right? Now, Duran both landed and threw more punches for a 35% success rate, while Leonard, who abandoned his usual slick boxing style and went toe-to-toe with Duran for this fight, and Leonard landed 273 punches of 753 thrown for a 36% rate. Now, while Leonard made adjustments late in the fight, Duran had built a large enough lead by that point, okay? And when the decision was announced, Duran was incorrectly announced as a winner by majority decision, as one judge's scorecard was erroneously tabulated 147-147, a draw. But the mistake was correct, was discovered, and Duran won on all 3 scorecards with scores 145-144, 148-147, and 146-144. Razor thin fight. Yes, that was a great fight. Duran pulled it out though. And then let's look at the aftermath of this one. The aftermath of the fight. Yep, there you go. Duran was the winner. Roberto, the hands of stone. So the aftermath. Now, speaking after the fight, Duran said, Leonard is the best I have fought. He hit me hard a couple of times, but I was never in bad shape. Leonard was pretty good, but he had to be because he was fighting me. That's what Roberto said after the fight, okay? So that was the first fight in the Four Kings series. Let's move on to the second one. Now, the second fight in the series was Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran 2, okay? Same 2. Leonard Duran 2 was the second fight, okay? Now, Leonard Duran 2 was billed as the super fight and later popularly known as No Mas, right? It started out as the super fight, and then after the fight, it became No Mas. It was contested on November 25th, 1980 for the WBC and the Ring Welterweight Championship. Same titles, but this time Duran was the champion and Leonard was the challenger, right? They had changed hands. Now, it took place at the Louisiana Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. It was the second of 3 fights that would have happened between these two, between Leonard and Duran. Now, he got his name, No Mas, from the moment at the end of the 8th round when Duran turned away from Leonard towards the referee and quit by apparently saying No Mas, which is Spanish for no more. Now, we're going to get into that later when we get into the fight. Okay, now the background. Leonard and Duran had fought in June 20th, 1980, about 5 months before, in Montreal, Canada. Now, Leonard was making his second title defense in that fight. And Leonard had abandoned his usual slick boxing style and stood flat-footed against Duran. And Duran had won the fight and the titles, right? By a narrow, unanimous decision. Okay, so let's look at the second fight, Leonard Duran 2. Okay, Leonard Duran 2. Okay, hold on for 1 second. Leonard Duran 2. I should have did this early. But there we go. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, Leonard Duran 2. There you go. There's Leonard when he wound up and then he hit Roberto with the jab. Roberto knew that Leonard had that bolo punch in his arsenal. So when Leonard wound up like that, Duran thought that was what was coming. And then Leonard hit him with the left. Okay. Now the fight. Now the rematch took place November 25th, 1980 at the Superdome in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now Leonard used his superior speed and movement this time to outbox and befuddle Duran. Now Leonard said, the entire fight I was moving. He tried to get me against the ropes again this time. But this time I'd pivot, spin off, pow, come underneath with a punch. Now in round 7, Leonard began to taunt Duran, right? And late in the round, that move right there, he wound up with his right hand as if he was going to throw a bolo punch. And then he suddenly snapped out a left jab and caught Duran flush in the face, right? So in the closing seconds of the next round, round 8, Duran turned his back on Leonard and quit, waving his gloves, right? And apparently saying to referee Octavio Moran, no mas, which means no more in English. Now, Leonard got the win by TKO at 2:44 of round 8. And that was only 16 seconds left in that round. And he regained the WBC welterweight title. Now, what was so strange, at the time that Duran quit, he was well within the fight, man. It was a very close razor-thin fight. When Duran quit, it was still a very winnable fight for him. With 7 rounds left to go, it was 8th round, they had 7 rounds left, Leonard led by a very small margin. The official cards read at that time 68-66, 68-66, and 67-66. That is like 4-3 or something, like 1 round. Maybe 2. One judge had him up by 1 round. Okay. So Duran was well within the fight when he quit. That was just crazy. And as much as people talk about how Leonard got Duran in the rematch fast because Duran was out of shape and had to lose weight real fast, it wasn't 100%, he was still well within the fight. It was still a very good, very close fight. Okay. So just what would happen if Duran had came in there 100%? So yeah, very close fight. Now the aftermath of the fight. Okay, aftermath. Yeah, Leonard won this one. Aftermath. So after the fight, Duran claimed that he never said no mas to anyone. Okay. Now he blamed Howard Cosell, who was commentating, as coming up with that no mas statement. Duran said he never said it. He blamed Howard Cosell for it, right? Coming up with the phrase no mas. Now Duran said he was just muttering to himself at the time. He said he didn't say no mas, he was just muttering to himself. And he said he quit because of stomach cramps, which he said started to bother him in the 5th round. And he said the cramps occurred because he took off weight too quickly, and then he ate too much after the weigh-in that morning. They was having same-day weigh-ins then. And he said he ate too much after the weigh-in that morning. But then his manager, Carlos Elita, threw him right under the bus, right? Threw him under the bus, backed over top of him, then came forward and ran over him again. His manager, Carlos Elita, said Duran always ate that way before fights and never experienced any stomach pains, right? Elita said Duran was not experiencing stomach pains. He said he quit because he was embarrassed. This is the man's manager. Even if he wasn't supposed to still back him up, say something like, yeah, he was hurting so bad this morning, we started to cancel the fight. But this man just threw Duran under the bus, right? So Leonard claimed credit for having forced Duran to quit, right? And took great satisfaction in it. Leonard said, I made the great Roberto Duran quit. To make Roberto Duran quit is better than a knockout, okay? Better than knocking him out. Now, according to one boxing expert, Duran's manager, Carlos Elita, made the mistake of scheduling the rematch too soon after the first fight. So who was Carlos Elita working for? He threw the man under the bus. He scheduled the rematch too soon. He knew that Duran was out there partying and wasn't going to be in shape in time. So he said he did not allow Duran enough time to drop the necessary weight, and more importantly, drop it properly. Okay. Now Duran's stature, his brand really took a hit after that no mas fight too. Duran's stature in his home country of Panama took a dramatic dive after the fight. The immediate reaction in Panama was shock. Then it turned to anger. Now within hours after the fight, all his endorsements, commercials featuring Roberto Duran were ordered off the air in Panama and the United States. Okay? So, but he did make a good comeback. He became one of the legendary Four Kings because those two fights, they were not the Four Kings yet. He became a champion again. He became one of the legendary Four Kings. On June 16th, 1983, on Duran's 32nd birthday, he knocked out undefeated Davey Moore with in the 8th round to win the WBA Junior Middleweight Championship. In Panama, there was rejoicing in the streets. Talk about some fair weather fans. Now they're rejoicing in the street, right? Leonard and Duran would fight a third fight in December 7th, 1989. And that would be the final fight in the Four Kings series, okay? Leonard Duran was number 2 in the series. Okay, let's go to the third fight. Now, Sugar Ray was in the first 3 Four Kings fights. Leonard Hearns won was the 3rd fight. Now, Sugar Ray was in the first Four Kings fight and the last Four Kings fight. And he was in the first 3 Four Kings fights. And he was in the last 3 Four Kings fights. 6 overall. He was in the most of them. First 3 and the last 3, Sugar Ray was a part of them. Number 3, Sugar Ray Leonard versus Thomas Hearns 1. Now, Leonard Hearns 1 was billed as the showdown. Okay, billed as the showdown. It was contested on September 16th, 1981 for the undisputed welterweight championship. Now, a little background to this fight. Sugar Ray Leonard won the WBC welterweight title with a 15th round knockout of Wilfred Benitez in 1979. Now, he lost it to Roberto Duran by a close decision in June 1980 and regained it 5 months later in the infamous No Mas fight, in which Duran quit in the 8th round. Of the 2 fights we just talked about. In June 1981, Leonard moved up to the junior middleweight division for 1 fight, knocking out Ayub Kalule in 9 rounds to win the WBA junior middleweight title. Now, Hearns won the WBA welterweight title in 1980, scoring a 2nd round knockout over Jose Pepino Cuevas in Detroit, Michigan. He made 3 successful title defenses, stopping Luis Ramirez, Randy Shields, and Pablo Baez. Now, promoted as the showdown, Leonard came into the fight against Hearns 30 wins, 1 loss, 21 knockouts. And Hearns came in 32 wins, no losses, 30 knockouts for a 93% knockout rate. Hearns knocked out 30 of the first 32 people he faced in his career. Okay? And the fight was on September 16th, 1981 at Caesars Palace, Las Vegas, Nevada, to unify the World's Welterweight Championship in a scheduled 15-round fight. Now, the winner of this fight would be undisputed because it was WBA, WBC at that point. Okay? Now, they fought before a live crowd of 23,600 people and a worldwide TV audience of 300 million plus, right? Now, it was one of the first major fights to be promoted by Main Events. Okay, so let's look at the fight. Leonard Hearns won. 3rd fight in the Four Kings series. Leonard Hearns won. Now, the fight began as expected. Leonard boxing from a distance and Hearns stalking. Now, Leonard had difficulty with Hearns' long reach and sharp jab. And by the end of round 5, Leonard had a growing swelling under his left eye. And Hearns had built a considerable lead on the scorecards. Now, Leonard, becoming more aggressive, hurt Hearns in the 6th round with a left hook to the chin. Leonard battered Hearns in rounds 6 and 7. But Hearns miraculously regrouped. Then Hearns started to stick and move, and he started to pile up points again. Now the roles reversed after the 7th round. Leonard became the stalker, and Hearns became the boxer. Okay? Hearns won rounds 9 through 12 on all 3 scorecards. Now, between rounds 12 and 13, Leonard's trainer, the legendary Angelo Dundee, said the words that became legendary. "You're blowing it, son. You're blowing it." So Leonard, with a badly swollen left eye, came roaring out in the 13th round. After hurting Hearns with a right, Leonard exploded with a combination of punches and sent Hearns through the ropes. Hearns managed to rise, but was dropped again near the end of the round. And Hearns did not recover in between rounds. So in round 14, after staggering Hearns with an overhand right, Leonard pinned Hearns against the ropes, where he unleashed another furious combination, prompting referee Davey Pearl to stop the contest and award Sugar Ray Leonard the undisputed World Welterweight Championship. Now, Hearns was leading by score at the time of the stoppage in round 14. Hearns was leading by scores of 124, 122, 125, 122, and 125, 121. So that means he had to fight one because he was leading by 3 points on one card, 2 on one, and 4 on one. So with one round left, Leonard would have had to get like a couple of knockdowns to catch up, right, in that last round. So Hearns pretty much all he had to do was make it to the cards, which he didn't do. Okay, Leonard got him out of the 14th round. Now, the aftermath was a little controversy. Aftermath of this fight. Okay. Now, after the fight, there was controversy due to the scoring of rounds 6 and 7. Even though Leonard dominated, hurting Hearns and battering him, all 3 judges gave both rounds to Leonard by a 10-9 margin. Now, many felt that the 10-point must-scoring system was not properly used, and those rounds should have been scored 10-8, right? Because you can score 10-8 without a knockdown. A lot of people felt that Leonard dominated those rounds so well that he should have got 10-8s. Now, and that would have put him right there up on the cards, well within reach of Hearns in that 14, but he only got 10-9. Now, while the 10-point must system nowadays is regarded as the international standard for scoring, at that time, the Nevada Athletic Commission had only recently adopted it for all fights, right? It's sanctioned. As such, judges used to scoring with older methods, like as the round scoring system, had little guidance as to whether or not a round could be scored 10-8 if it did not contain a knockdown in it, right? So there was also some talk of the fight being stopped sooner and for less reason than normal. The fights are usually stopped for that era, right? Because, they let you take a little bit more punishment back then. So there was like, said that David Pearl stopped the fight too soon. Now, there was a rematch between Leonard and Hearns, but it didn't happen until 8 years later in 1989. We're going to get to that, but that was the second fight, Leonard Hearns, which Leonard won that one. Okay, yeah, Leonard won that one. So the fourth fight in the Four Kings series was Marvelous Marvin Hagler and Roberto Duran. That was a good one. Hagler Duran was the fourth fight in the series. Okay. Like and subscribe. Super chat. Cash app. I just appreciate you listening. Okay. Fourth fight in the Four Kings series. Marvelous Marvin Hagler versus Roberto Duran. That was a good one. Okay. Now, Marvin Hagler versus Roberto Duran took place November 10th, 1983 for the WBA, WBC, IBF, and Ring undisputed middleweight titles. Now, the background to the fight. Now, the fight was televised live on closed circuit in the United States and on WAPA TV in Puerto Rico free of charge, where it was worked by sportscaster Rafael Bracero. Now, closed circuit was it was the pay-per-view of the day where they were showed on the big screen at movie theaters and basketball arenas around the country, on college campuses or pro NBA basketball arenas, and you pay a fee to get in. They just showed on the big screen at the arenas. That was closed circuit. In the United States, that was the only way you could see it live, was on closed circuit. In Puerto Rico, it was free on WAPA TV. Okay. Now, it was shown days later in the United States for free on cable station HBO, World Championship Boxing, with Barry Tompkins, Larry Merchant, and Duran's former rival and Hagler's future opponent, Sugar Ray Leonard, working the HBO broadcast, right? You had to wait a couple of days, you'd see it for free in the United States. But if you wanted to see it that night, you had to go out closed circuit, which wasn't bad. Only thing between the pay-per-view, now you can sit in the comfort of your home, but them days you had to you had to go out just to see the fights on the big screen. Okay, so the fight caused great expectations, both among boxing and non-boxing fans. And Ring Magazine produced a rare special issue about the fight, which came out days before it. Before the fight took place. Now, other media outlets such as Sports Illustrated also covered the event. Now, Hagler came into the fight with 57 wins and 2 losses, 2 draws, and 48 of his wins came by knockout, 84.2%. For his part, Duran sported a record of 77 wins, just 4 losses in 81 pro contests. 58 of Duran wins was by knockout. Okay? Now, the fight's presenter was Chuck Hall. Its referee was Stanley Christodoulou of South Africa. Now, Christodoulou, coincidentally, had also ref Duran's fellow Latin and Central American Alexis Arguello's first attempt versus Aaron Pryor to become a 40-division world champion. Okay? Which had come almost a year before Hagler Duran's date on November 12th, 1982 in Miami, Florida. Now the fight, Hagler Duran. Now this fight was the main event of a program that also included Freddie Roach's 10-round unanimous decision loss in a rematch with Louis Burke, and a fight to determine who would fight the winner of this fight between American Frank the Animal Fletcher and Argentina's Juan Rodon, which was won by Rodon by a brutal, blistering 6-round knockout. Okay, so Rodon would fight the winner of Hagler and Duran. And that was a fight, it was a Rodon-Hagler fight, the 2 winners. That was a fight where Hagler's only knockdown, which Hagler took to his death, said it was a slip, which it was, but the referee ruled it a knockdown. It was the only knockdown on Hagler's record. Yep. Only knockdown on his record, which was really a slip. Okay. Now, Hagler beat Duran by a 15-round unanimous decision. Now, despite what fans and experts expected, the fight was a largely tactical affair, with Duran unexpectedly boxing from outside, while Hagler awaited for his opportunities, picking his spots. Everybody thought this was going to be a war between those two. It ended up being on the way to the war, a technical boxing match broke out, right? Now, Duran led on the 3 official judges' scorecards after 13 rounds by 1 point, right, on each of them. But Hagler dominated rounds 14 and 15 to forge ahead and retain his titles by a razor-thin but unanimous decision. 146, 145, 144, 143, and 142, 141. Okay? Yeah, Hagler pulled that one out, but Duran was ahead after 13. Now, the aftermath of the fight. Hagler was the winner. The aftermath. Hagler then retained his title 4 more times, including wins over Juan Rodon, Thomas Hearns, and John the Beast Mugabe, before losing his crown in his final fight to Sugar Ray Leonard in April 6, 1987. Now, Hagler retired with a record of 62 wins, 3 losses, and 2 draws, with 52 wins by knockout, 83.8% knockout ratio. Okay, not bad. Now, after his boxing career, Hagler moved to Italy and became an actor. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1993. Now, Duran lost again in his very next fight to Thomas Hearns and retired following that outing, but he made several comebacks, realizing his dream of becoming a 40-division world champion. Yep, Hagler Duran was the fourth fight in the Four Kings series. Now, the fifth fight in the series was Thomas Hearns versus Roberto Duran. Okay? Hearns Duran was the fifth fight in the Four Kings series. Let's take a look at that one. Everybody must be out there cooking out today and stuff. I see y'all. Okay? Could have put me on the loudspeaker in the backyard. Well, maybe I am, who knows? But anyway, the fifth fight was Thomas Hearns versus Roberto Duran in the Four Kings series. Now, this was billed as Malice at the Palace, Caesar's Palace out there in Vegas. Took place on June 15th, 1984. This was for the WBC and the Ring Super Welterweight titles, 154. Now, a little background to it. Now, Duran had captured the WBA Super Welterweight title after defeating the reigning champion, Davey Moore, on June 16, 1983. Now, Duran's first defense of his newly won title was put on hold when it was announced 2 weeks after the Moore win that he was moving up to middleweight to challenge Marvin Hagler, the fight we just talked about. Now, after losing to Hagler, Duran opted to return to super welterweight, okay, where it was scheduled to make a mandatory defense against the WBA's #1 ranked contender, which was Mike McCallum at the time. But, however, in a press conference in March 1984, Duran announced he would instead face WBC super welterweight champion Thomas Hearns, and he had to vacate his title. Now, he tried to get the WBA to allow him to fight Hearns. It didn't come good because the WBA would have been on the line in that fight. And Duran made a request that he could fight the WBC champion Hearns, then come back and fight his mandatory, but the WBA declined. And Duran got stripped. But he went up here with the fight with Hearns because that was the money, But Thomas Hearns, because by that point they became the Four Kings, right? And any Four Kings fight was a big money fight. So he got stripped because McCallum was the #1 contender. But he fought Hearns, so the WBA stripped him. Now, the fight was originally scheduled to take place in the Bahamas between Hearns and Duran. But when the site proved incompatible due to both logistical and financial issues, it was instead moved to Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. It couldn't have been the Malice at the Palace in the Bahamas, right? Yeah. So it was moved to Las Vegas, Caesar's Palace, where it became Malice at the Palace. Let's look at the fight. This was bad. This was bad for the Hands of Stone. Now the fight. And from the outset, Hearns was able to use his height and reach advantage, which were both significant, to prevent Duran from fighting him on the inside, where he wanted to be. Hearns kept Duran's away with repeated use of his left jab, then cut Duran's eye with a left hook counter at the 2-minute mark of the first round, right? Now, with 30 seconds remaining in the first round, in the opening round, Hearns dropped Duran with a hard right hand. And referee Carlos Padilla administered the standing 8 count to Duran and allowed the contest to continue. But Duran would go down again following a barrage of punches from Hearns. And that ended with a hard shot to the body, right? Nowadays, Duran would rise again, but the round ended, right? And Duran had to be guided to his corner by his trainer. He didn't know where he was at, okay? But he came back for round 2. Now, in round 2, Hearns immediately resumed the attack on Duran and laid into him with several vicious combinations, right? Now, Duran went down for a third time at the 107 mark of the second round, after which Padilla immediately stopped the fight. Because the way Duran went down, man, he wasn't getting up. Looked like he was asleep on the way down. Went down face first, yeah. The Hearns retained his title, becoming the first fighter to knock Roberto Duran down in his career. Yeah, that was the first time Roberto had ever been down. Now the aftermath. Yeah, Hearns got the win on that one. Hearns got the win. To show the man with his arms head. There you go. Hearns got the win. Let's look at the aftermath of this fight. Hearns Duran, which was fifth. This was the fifth fight of the Four Kings series. Now I can't remember what I was at, man. Shit. Guess why did you do that to yourself? Yeah. No, bear with me for one moment, please. I done lost my place on the slide displays. Yeah, Hearns got the win. That was Hearns Duran, right? Yeah. Okay. So the aftermath of this fight. Now, Duran decided to retire from boxing again for the second time following the fight. However, as with his first retirement, it did not last long, and Duran resumed fighting in 1986 at middleweight. He went up. He went back up to middleweight, okay? And after knocking out Fred Hutchins in his next defense, Hearns decided to move up to 162 to middleweight to challenge Marvin Hagler, right? For the undisputed middleweight crown. Yep, and that is the next fight. Hearns and the Marvelous One. Yeah, after the Duran fight, Hearns moved up to middleweight, challenge Hagler. And this was the sixth fight in the Four Kings series, Hearns versus Hagler. And after this, we're going to talk. All the Four Kings had legendary trainers. So we're going to talk about their trainers after this. And then, time permitting, we're going to talk about some of the other great fighters from the 80s, like the fifth king, Wilfredo Benitez, Mike McCallum, who I mentioned. Roberto was supposed to fight. That was his mandatory, but he went for the money and fought Hearns, which I can't blame him. Donald Curry, Marvin Starling. Yeah, some of the other great fighters of the 80s we're going to talk about. Okay. Julian Jackson. Michael second to none. Yeah, we're going to talk about some of them, if time permitting. Okay, so Marvelous Marvin Hagler versus Thomas Hearns, the sixth fight in the Four Kings series. Now, billed as the fight, but afterwards, it was changed from the fight to the war after the fight. Took place April 15th, 1985, tax day. This was for the undisputed middleweight world championship held by Marvin Hagler. Now, a little background to this fight. By 1985, Marvelous Marvin Hagler had been the undisputed champion of the middleweight division since September 27th, 1980, 5 years after having been widely regarded as the number one contender for much of the late 1970s. Now, his first two shots at the world middleweight title resulted in controversy. The first this was when Hagler was first trying to get the title. The first controversial fight he was in was an unpopular draw against then champion Vito Antuofermo in 1979. And the second was a 3-round TKO of Alan Minter in London, which led to a riot by Minter's fans, right? And the hard road to the middleweight championship, however, may have helped motivate Hagler to remain dominant during his reign, okay? Now, Hagler was renowned for his conditioning and durability, suffering one official knockdown in his career, which really wasn't a knockdown, it was really a slip against Juan Domingo Rodon, okay? An incident Hagler always insisted should have been ruled a slip. Yep. And by the time he fought Thomas Hearns, Hagler had defended the title 10 times, winning all but one fight by knockout. The sole Hagler defense that went the distance was a 15-round decision over Roberto Duran, which we already covered. Another Four Kings fight. Hagler was then approaching the middleweight record of 14 title defenses held by King Carlos Monzon, right? Now, when Hagler versus Hearns took place, Hearns had recently moved up from the welterweight to the junior welterweight to the middleweight division. Okay, his last fight was at junior middleweight against Duran, remember? And Hearns was regarded as one of the hardest punchers of all time, winning 30 of his first 32 fights by knockout, right? In Hearns' first title shot in 1980, he scored a spectacular second-round knockout over champion Pipino Cuevas. Now, Hearns defended that title 3 times before meeting Sugar Ray Leonard in a thrilling fight, the Showdown. Now, coming into the Hagler fight, Hearns had defeated several middleweights, including Marcos Gerard by a first-round knockout. And incidentally, Gerard had gone the distance against both Leonard and Hagler, right? Now, given Hagler and Hearns' power and the way both men had won their respective fights before this one, coming into this fight, it garnered significant media attention, right? And fan interest around the world. Yeah, this was a big one here, Hagler and Hearns. Now, this fight took place at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada, and the fight was broadcast by HBO. Now, Hearns got a massage before the fight, much to the chagrin of his trainer, Emanuel Stewart, who felt the massage weakened Hearns' legs during the fight, and it led to Hearns to adopt a more aggressive approach than he normally would have. Okay, yeah, that massage was a bad idea. Let's look at the fight between Hagler and Hearns. The fight between Thomas the Hitman Hearns and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. The 6th fight in the Four Kings series, I think. Okay, bear with me for a moment. Why am I always doing this to myself? Yeah, this was the 6th fight in the Four Kings series. Now let's look at the fight between these two great middleweights. Yeah, I can't find out where it was at. I'm always doing something. The fight. OMG. What the hell is it? This is crazy. It must be on the next page. There it is. Okay, the fight. Now, this was the big one here. The greatest 3 rounds in boxing history. Okay. Now, Hagler, normally a slow starter, stormed Hearns from the opening bell, right? Landing with several brutal right hands, eventually pinning Hearns to the ropes. Now, Hearns threw his devastating right hand to Hagler's chin, stunning him for a moment before Hagler was able to tie Hearns up in a clinch. Now, seconds later, the two were trading power shots again, with Hagler stunning Hearns with a hard left during the exchange. Now, the slugfest lasted for the next 2.5 minutes. And when the first round ended, Hearns had a broken right hand, and Hagler had developed a nasty cut on his forehead. But the injuries did not slow either of them down during the first round. Now, by the beginning of the second round, it looked like Hearns had no legs under him, okay? Like Hearns' leg was gone as he slowed the pace by boxing Hagler. Now, Hearns stumbled several times as he attempted to move around the ring and change direction. Now, Hagler experimented by switching to orthodox, right? But switched back immediately to southpaw as he found more success countering Hearns' jab from the southpaw position. Now, by the end of the second round, Hagler had pinned Hearns to the ropes again, successfully landing a volley of punches. Now, the action in round 2 has slowed from the blistering pace of round 1. Okay? Now, in round 3, Hearns again tried to set the pace. Now, about a minute into the round, the cut on Hagler's forehead got worse, and a tremendous flow of blood was streaming down Hagler's face. Referee Richard Steele halted the action so the ring doctor could take a look. Okay? So now, facing the threat of the fight being stopped on cuts, Hagler attacked Hearns with the aggression of the first round again, right? A big overhand left to the head drove Hearns back to the ropes and dizzied him. Hearns backed away from Hagler, smiling as if to suggest the punch had not hurt him. Those are the ones that hurt. Hagler landed a hard right hook on Hearns' head, right? Hearns awkwardly stumbled back, with Hagler hot in pursuit. The champion smashed a vicious right hand to Hearns' chin. Hearns went down, face forward, as Hagler landed 2 uppercuts. As Hearns fell face forward to the canvas, Sugar Ray Leonard, who was working as a commentator at ringside, yelled into his microphone, "He's gone, he's gone." Now, Hearns did stagger back to his feet at the 9 count, but referee Richard Steele waved the fight off. Now, the image of a blood-soaked Hagler being carried around the ring in victory by his handlers, and Hearns being carried back to his corner in semi-consciousness, remains to this day a graphic testimony of the intensity of the war. Yeah, that was a big one there. And the aftermath, forget the aftermath for this one. Hagler won it. So the aftermath. In the immediate aftermath of the war, Donald Curry, who was working for British television, was highly critical of the loser. Curry said, Hearns fought the wrong fight. Curry said, Hearns should have started the fight more cautiously and not got into an early slugfest with Hagler. Hearns did try to box, but Hagler just didn't let it. British fight publication Boxing News called the fight 8 minutes of mayhem, while the Ring magazine called the fight the most electrifying 8 minutes ever, right? And the fight won Fight of the Year of 1985, despite lasting only 3 rounds over some other pretty good fights. We had Larry Holmes and Michael Spinks had a 15-round fight that year, barn burner. This 3-round fight beat that. I think Hector Camacho and Jose Luis Ramirez fought that year, 12-rounder. They had 12 and 15 then. But this 3-round fight won Fight of the Year over both of those. Okay? It's got a couple more in the series to go. 7, 8, and 9. Now, number 7 in the Four Kings series was Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler. Leonard and Hagler was the 7th fight in the Four Kings series. Now, Leonard Hagler was billed as the super fight, right? And it was on April 6, 1987 for the WBC and the Ring magazine middleweight titles. Now, Leonard won a controversial split decision, and ultimately, this became Hagler's final fight of his career. Little background. Now, in the late summer of 1986, negotiations began for a proposed super fight between long-reigning undisputed middleweight champion Marvelous Marvin Hagler and former two-weight champion Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray was just two weights at that time. Now, Leonard had fought only once since his first professional retirement in 1982, once in the last 5 years, defeating Kevin Howard in 1984, retiring again immediately following the fight after being dissatisfied with his performance. Now, in March 1986, Hagler defeated John the Beast Mugabe by 11th round knockout. So Mugabe gave Hagler a tough fight and swelled his right eye. And Sugar Ray Leonard was in attendance at that fight. I think he was commentating at the Hagler-Mugabe fight. And after seeing Hagler having slower speed and so much trouble with Mugabe, right? Leonard thought, okay, I can beat that Hagler, right? And in May 1986, Leonard announced that he would come out of retirement, only to fight Marvin Hagler, okay? Came out of retirement just to fight Hagler. The fight. And what would go down to be among the most controversial fights in boxing history, Leonard would ultimately earn a split decision victory over Hagler. The Hagler started the fight abandoning his usual southpaw stance in favor of an orthodox stance, something he never did and which would prove costly, as he lost the first 2 rounds on all 3 judges' scorecards. Yep, that cost him. By round 3, Hagler had switched back to his southpaw stance, right? The Hagler would spend most of the fight as the aggressor, while Leonard would pepper Hagler with combinations before retreating away. Now, during the last 30 seconds of each round, Leonard would attack Hagler with a flurry of punches, combinations, in an effort to steal the round on the scorecards, and it worked a lot of times too. Now, overall, Leonard landed 306 of 629 punches thrown for 49%, not bad, compared to Hagler's 291 out of 792 punches for 37%, okay? Now, Hagler landed more jabs than Leonard, but neither fighter came close to knocking the other one out, down or out. Now, Hagler later complained about Leonard not standing and fighting him face to face, and stated that Leonard did not dominate the fight enough to take a champion's title away from him, okay? Now, Leonard's supporters dismissed that notion in that defending champions do not have a lesser burden of performance, okay? That's just not true. You know, Hagler felt that Leonard didn't do enough to take his title, but Leonard's supporters said, just because you're the defending champion, you do not have a lesser burdens of performance. Now, Lou Filippo, now listen to this. Lou Filippo scored the fight, 115-113 for Hagler. Davey Moore scored the fight, 115-113 for Leonard. And the third judge, Jojo Guerrero, scored the fight, 118-110 for Leonard, which was totally ridiculous. That was nowhere near what the fight should have been. Now, Guerrero's scorecard was widely criticized by the media. Now, listen to this, though. Hagler's team actually removed one judge before the fight and had him replaced. Now, this judge scored the fight while watching from his home and scored the fight 115-113 for Hagler. The judge they had removed gave Hagler the fight, but he was unofficial then. He was scoring it from home. Crazy, ain't it? Aftermath of the fight. Yeah, Leonard got to win. Very controversial. Very controversial. Man, it's a long aftermath. Okay. But anyway, aftermath. Hagler requested a rematch, but Leonard chose to retire again for the third of his 5 retirement. In June 1988, 14 months after the fight, Hagler announced his retirement, stating that he was tired of waiting for Leonard to grant him a rematch. Just 1 month after Hagler retired, Leonard announced his return to boxing. If it walks like a duck, looks like a duck, it's a duck. Quack, quack, Sugar Ray Leonard. It was a duck. Sugar Ray is one of my favorite boxers, but I call him like I said, that was a duck. Could have at least waited a couple months, Sugar Ray. Hagler waited 14 months trying to get a rematch. He gave up, retired. 1 month later, Sugar Ray comes out and retires. Quack, quack. Now, in 1990, 3 years later, Leonard finally offered Hagler a rematch. But by then, Hagler had settled into retirement and had no interest whatsoever in returning to boxing. Hagler stated, "A few years ago, I wanted Leonard bad, but now I'm over that." And Leonard knew that. That's just part of the duck. That's just another part of the duck. Just like when fighters price themselves out of a fight, make an offer they know the fighter's going to receive. That's the offer Leonard knew Hagler was going to turn down. The man been out 3 years. He might have been 40 by then. Now you're going to offer him a rematch. After the man waited 14 months after the fight, and you retired. And when the man retired, 1 month later you came back. Now 3 years later you're going to offer him a rematch. Sugar Ray Leonard did a couple of ducks in that sequence. Yeah, for sure. It looks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It's a duck. That was two Sugar Ray Leonard duck the rematch. Okay, number 8 of the 9 Four Kings fights was Sugar Ray Leonard versus Thomas Hearns 2. Leonard Hearns 2. Okay, wait a minute, I really hit it. Leonard Hearns 2. Now, Leonard Hearns 2 took place on June 12th, 1989. This is for the WBC Super Middleweight title. Now, the fight ended in a split draw, meaning Leonard retained his title. Leonard was the champion coming in. Background. In January 1989, promoter Bob Arum announced the long-awaited rematch between reigning WBC Super Middleweight champion Sugar Ray Leonard and reigning WBO Super Middleweight champion Thomas Hearns. Remember, they had the first fight in 81. It took 8 years to make this rematch. Now, the two had met nearly 8 years before, with Leonard rallying in the 14th round to defeat Hearns by technical knockout after trailing on all 3 of the judges' scorecards. Now, both Leonard and Hearns had become 5 division champions in their previous fights before this one, with Leonard capturing both the WBC light heavyweight title and the super middleweight title after defeating Donnie Lalonde. That was on November 7th, 1988. While Hearns had won the lightly regarded WBO super middleweight title strap, right? Only 3 days before they announced this fight, after earning a close majority decision against James the Heat Kitchen. Leonard then vacated his light heavyweight title, deciding to stay in the super middleweight division. Now, Leonard and Hearns agreed to fight at a catch weight of 164 pounds rather than the 168-pound super middleweight limit. Okay, so let's take a look at this fight. This is the next to the last Four Kings fight. Now, Hearns scored the only 2 knockdowns of the fight, dropping Leonard in the 3rd round after grazing him with a right cross that caused Leonard to lose his footing, and again in round 11 after after landing consecutive right hands. Now, though Leonard did not score a knockdown over Hearns, he would have a big round 5, right? Winning the round 10-8. Now, they gave him 10-8 in this one. I guess they looked at the first fight when they said he should have got 10-8 instead of 8. They gave Leonard a 10-8 in round 5 on all 3 scorecards after dominating Hearns throughout the round. So he got a 10-8 without a knockdown. Now, Leonard would also win the 12th and final round on all three scorecards as well. So Judge Darby Shirley would give Leonard a 10-8 round in round 12, opposed to the other two judges who scored it 10-9. Had Shirley scored the round 10-9, Hearns would have been declared the winner by split decision, right? Now, in a hard-fought fight, Leonard Hearns would go the full 12-round distance and ultimately fight to a split draw. 113-112 for Hearns. Another scored to fight 113-112 for Leonard. And the third had to fight 112-112, right? Now, the draw was controversial, as most people who watched the fight, including the television announcers, had Hearns winning it. You know, Hearns did enough to be the winner of this fight. And the ringside fans loudly booed after they announced the decision. Okay? And the aftermath, this one ended up a draw. The aftermath to this one. Both fighters, however, accepted the draw, with Leonard stating, "I think we both showed we're champions. I accept the decision." Yeah, you lost. I guess you do accept. Now, Hearns declared, "I respect the decision. I'm proud to fight to a draw. The judges could have ruled that I lost, so I'm thankful for what I got." And the final fight in this Four Kings series was the same fight that started the series. Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran. This one is Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran 3. Leonard Duran 3. Okay? Final fight in the fourth. Mike Rim in the building. You know, I had to refresh the chat. Wow, look at all of them people I missed. I'm sorry. We got Bruce Gass. I thought something wasn't right. Donnie Williams in the building. Salute Donnie. Looking at the all 9 of the Four Kings fight. We got Terrell Cameron. What's up, Terrell? How are you today? Happy Memorial Day to everybody. Terrell Cameron. We have Thomas Hill in the building. What's up, Thomas Hill? In the building. And we also have Mike Rim in the building. So Mike Rim's name. Mike Rim. What's up, Mike Rim? Yeah, there is. Mike Rim is way up there. Okay, salute, Mike. Yeah, I was wondering, I said everybody cooking out there. Nobody was listening to everybody. I had to refresh the chat. But yeah, the final fight in the Four Kings series was the same as the first one. Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran. And Sugar Ray Leonard was in 6 fights of the 9. He was in the first 3, and he was in the last 3. Let's look at this last fight. Leonard Duran 3. Okay? Now the background. Reigning WBC super middleweight champion, Sugar Ray Leonard had made the first successful defense of his title after fighting Thomas Hearns to a draw, right? There ain't no successful defense, no draw. Well, he didn't lose it, so I guess it is successful. After the Hearns fight, Leonard began negotiations for both a third fight with longtime rival Roberto Duran and a potential third fight with Hearns. Now, while the third fight with Hearns did not come to fruition, Leonard and Duran would reach agreement to face each other for a third time, okay? This fight was announced at a press conference on July 26, 1989. So the venue where the fight would take place was still unknown. So 5 days later, they said they would have a fight at the Mirage, which was not even finished yet. Okay, so it was at the Mirage, the brand new Mirage, right? Not even opened yet. It was finished building it, but it wasn't open. Okay, it was at the Mirage. Now, Duran had won the WBC middleweight title after upsetting Iran Barkley in his previous fight. Well, only Leonard's super middleweight title was on the line. The Duran was 160. Yeah, middleweight. They was fighting for Leonard's super middleweight belt. Now, Leonard and Duran agreed to a catchweight, 162 pounds, right between middleweight and super middleweight. They should have put the middleweight title on the line to catchweight, right? Now, the fight was billed as Uno no Mas. Uno no Mas, right? In reference to Leonard, the way Leonard and Duran's second fight had ended. Uno no Mas. So the final fight between Leonard and Duran. Now, in contrast to their first two fights, this was entirely lopsided in Leonard's favor, right? Using constant movement and counterpunching, Leonard dominated Duran completely, neutralizing Duran's offense, right? And Leonard landed 227 punches, good for 52%, not bad at all, of total thrown, right? And Duran had 84 punches total in the fight for 14%. Duran was just going for the money because they got paid pretty good. You know, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard. It wasn't a good fight at all, but just their name. They got paid. Yeah, Duran landed 84 punches, man, 14%, over 12 rounds. Man, what is that per round? Like 5 or 6 punches? Let's see. Yeah, they was just going for the money then. They got together and said, come on, because they became friends by then, remember? Come on, let's make some more money. 84 divided by 12. That's 7 punches around. That's all Duran. They shouldn't even have paid him, man. And that's my favorite fight, Hands of Stone. But he shouldn't have got paid. 7 punches around, man. Come on. Anyway, the fight went to full 12 rounds before all 3 judges scoring the fight for Leonard. 120, 110, 119, 110, and 116, 111. 2 judges gave Duran exactly 1 round. Now the aftermath, okay? Let me get that one. Aftermath. In August 1990, Leonard relinquished the WBC super middleweight title, saying he was under the weight for the division, right? And he then offered Hearns a 3rd fight. But Hearns said he couldn't make the weight anymore, and he moved up to the light heavyweight division, right? And Leonard versus Duran was the final fight in the Four Kings series, 1989. Now, all 4 Kings, Leonard, Duran, and Hearns fought up into the 90s. Duran and Hearns fought into the 2000s, but they never faced each other again. Of course, Hagler, that 87 fight against Leonard, Hagler never fought again after that. I got some piece on the train. But let's talk about the other fighters from the 80s. Some other big names from the 80s, okay? Let's do that. Because, yeah, I really wanted to cover that one. Insurgents in the Kingdom. It's called Forgotten Fighters of the 1980s. This tab, it just dies real fast. So I had that on the chart. This is called Insurgents of the Kingdom. Forgotten Fighters of the 80s. These are some other good fighters from the 80s, you know, because the Four Kings they dominated the media and stuff in the 80s, but it was some other good fighters. And, you know, the first name come to mind is what? The 5th King, right? Wilfred Benitez, the 5th King. Insurgents in the Kingdom. 6 forgotten fighters of the 1980s, right? And you know the 5th King is going to be first. El Radar. Come on, El Radar. Let's do this. Here's El Radar right there. On the left. Okay, now, the 1980s was a memorable decade for all those who remember it. Saturday morning cartoons, crazy fashion, MTV, and the rise of the cultural phenomena known as hip hop. Yes, hip hop. Before the 80s, there was no hip hop, right? Yeah, that was the beginning of it. Now what happened? You don't get off the screen. I don't know what happened. Now, for boxing fans, the 80s was an amazing decade. Some have argued that it was boxing's last golden age, in an era that featured so many great fighters. The landscape of the welterweight, super welterweight, and middleweight divisions were ruled over by 4 particular fighters. And these fighters went on to become legends of mythical proportion. Now, one man was Marvelous Marvin Hagler. The other was known as the Hitman. And the Knights of the Round Table, Camelot, the careers of the 4 kings are now the stuff of boxing legend. But as always is always the case with boxing history, there's more to the story than that usually gets told. And while it is true, the 4 kings ruled over their kingdom with fervor, there were insurgents who waited until, I don't know why this screen is like this. And these insurgents waited in the wings to usurp their thrones. So today we're going to take a look at these insurgents of the kingdom, right? The forgotten fighters of the 1980s. Okay. I don't know what's going on. Like cutting my screen off. Okay, first is El Radar. El Radar's first. Forgotten fighters of the 1980s. Start over for El Radar. Okay, there's Al Booker in the building too. What's up, AB? My only member. Al Booker. Yeah, we talked about the 4 kings today. And now we're going to talk about, because the 80s wasn't all 4 kings now. There was some other good fighters in there, including the 5th king, Wilfred Benitez, right? El Radar. He fought all the 4 kings except Hagler, because El Radar never went up to middleweight, and Hagler fought at middleweight, amateur and pro. That was his only division he ever fought at, was middleweight. Now, Puerto Rican protege Wilfred El Radar Benitez is known to hardcore boxing fans as the 5th king, right? A boxing virtuoso, Benitez would turn pro at the age of 15. This amazing fighter accrued a body of work so impressive. The legendary Antonio Kid Caballé Cervantes he accrued a body of work that was so impressive that it almost sounds made up, right? Now, he would go on to win his first title by unseating the legend, Antonio Cervantes, at the age of 17. And Benitez was known for his counterpunching prowess, his accuracy, and most notably, his near supernatural defense, right? I have to switch up. That ain't working out stupid on there. I'm going to take that piece and jump back. Let me switch up. It ain't working too good. Your defense was near supernatural for El Radar, though. Yes, insurgents in the kingdom. Here we go. Where were we? El Radar. Yeah. That's better. Okay. Yes, that's supernatural defense. Now, to watch Benitez slip and evade punches was almost like watching Neo dodge bullets in the Matrix. Benitez was particularly dangerous off the rope. You know, whereas most counterpunchers want to fight in the center of the ring, Benitez would dare his opponent to follow him to the rope, where he would counter and break guys down with brilliant defense and accuracy, right? It was that defense and skill that would carry Benitez to titles in 3 weight classes. A classic fight with Sugar Ray Leonard. He gave Thomas Hearns fits, and he thoroughly outboxed the great Roberto Duran. You got to win over Duran, remember? Mm-hmm. And that was 15 rounds back then. Now, Benitez would retire with a record of 53 wins, 8 losses, and 1 draw, with 31 knockouts. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1996. Yep. The El Radar, Wilfred Benitez. Bad man. Okay, you're talking about some of the guys that were overshadowed by the Four Kings, but still had some good careers. It wasn't that overshadowed. The Magic Man. Marlon Starling. The Magic Man. He had that little jump step, when he was step after he reset, like a stallion. They called him the Magic Man, Marlon Starling. That's him on the right. Mm-hmm. Mike Mazik. What's up, Mike Mazik? Happy Memorial Day to everyone. This is one of them long weekends. Mm-hmm. We talked about the Four Kings, Mike. We are just now talking about some other good names from the 80s. Kind of overshadowed by King. We call them insurgents in the kingdom. Forgotten fighters of the 80s. The Magic Man, Marlon Starling. Okay? Now, in King Arthur's Camelot, one of the most well-known characters, it was the wizard Merlin. Now, the kingdom of the 80s started his own wizard, Marlon the Magic Man Starling. Turning pro in 1979, Starling would win his first 25 fights, employing a difficult to penetrate high guard, quick hands, great footwork, and power. Marlon Starling was quickly making himself a force to be reckoned with in the early 1980s, right? Now, despite the obvious talent, he would never get a shot at one of the Four Kings. Never did. That's another one. Mm-hmm. Marlon Starling would not win his first world title until 1987, when he knocked out the highly talented Olympic gold medalist, Mark Breland, right? On July 29th, 1988, Starling would lose his WBA welterweight title in controversial fashion when his opponent, Thomas Molinarez, hit him after the bell. And the fight would be reversed to a no contest. But Molinarez was not allowed to keep the title. And the Magic Man would work his charm once again in 1989. Now, shouldn't he have got the title back? When he would beat the very talented Lloyd Honeyghan for the WBC welterweight title. Beat Honeyghan. And Marlon Starling would retire with a record of 45 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw, 1 no contest, with 27 knockouts. The Magic Man. Okay. Stay with me. Stay with me for one second. We're winding down. Let's talk. Today was about the Four Kings. We're talking about some other fighters in the 80s. It wasn't all just Four Kings. Not by a long shot. There are some insurgents too. Music Hinton. Hope everybody's having a good long weekend. All of mine are long. Okay. Let me finish this thing off. Forgotten fighters of the 1980s. I was thinking Shadeja Green and Savannah Marshall was this weekend for some. I was looking for it. Of course, I didn't find it because it ain't tell what July or something. Was it this weekend? I think it's on the Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano card, right? Three. I'm glad they're having that trilogy. A lot of people said it's 1-0. Why have a trilogy? But yeah, it should be 2-0 for Amanda. Let's see what I can do with this one. Let's see. Okay, the Magic Man, number 3. On radar, the Magic Man. There we go. Number 3 is I think it's Michael 9. Yeah, Michael 9. Michael 9. Another one of those great fighters from the 1980s. Michael 9. Now, no fighter of the 80s was perhaps more physically gifted than middleweight phenom Michael Nunn. Standing at a rangy 6'1", Nunn has speed, power, skills, and guts. Okay? Nunn would turn pro in 1984. And after winning his first 30 fights, he would challenge Frank Tate for the IBF middleweight title in 1988. Michael Nunn would knock Tate out in the 9th round, okay? And solidify himself as the man to beat at 160. The Nunn would go on to secure big wins over the aforementioned Frank Tate, Sambu Kalambe, as well as a close win over Marlon Starling, who we just talked about. But it was the fighters he did not fight to stick out like a sore thumb. And Nunn was quite vocal about his frustration to secure a fight with Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler. Sadly, those fights never materialized, right? Michael Nunn would go on to win the WBA super middleweight title in 1992. Michael Nunn fell on hard times in his personal life and finished his career with a record of 58-4 with 37 knockouts. He did like 15 years in prison because he wanted to sell drugs. Yeah. But I think he got out like 2019. Michael second to none. That's what they called him. The Hawk. Talking about Julian Jackson. The Hawk. Now, when it comes to punching power, no discussion is complete without Julian Jackson's name being mentioned. After turning pro in 1981, he would become one of the most feared men in the 154-pound division. And notice, his name is not on any of the Four Kings resumes either, right? Now, Jackson would use his subtle skills and insane power to win his first 29 fights before failing in his first title bid against the legendary Mike McCallum in 1986. Mike is also on here, right? Now, not to be deterred, Jackson would challenge and beat Korean fighter In Chubayek for the vacant WBA super welterweight title in 1987. And Jackson would defend this title against the likes of Buster Drayton and the legendary Terry Norris, right? Jackson would go on to win the WBC middleweight title by beating talented British fighter Carl Graham. Yeah, that was a classic, one of the best knockouts of all time. Impressive or bad for Graham. But that was a serious knockout. Now, what makes his win over Graham all the more impressive was the fact he did so with retina damage that was surgically impaired. Now, Julian Jackson would retire from boxing with a record of 55 wins, 6 losses, 49 knockouts. Okay, Julian Jackson is seen by many boxing historians as one of the greatest pure punchers the sport has ever seen. 55 wins, 49 knockouts for Jackson. That's 89% knockout ratio. Yep, 55 wins. He stopped all but 6 men in his career. Julian Jackson. Then we have the Lone Star Cobra, which was Donald Curry. Remember him? These are just some other great fighters from the 1980s, other than the Four Kings. And if you notice, only one of these guys is on the Four Kings resume. That was Wilfred Benitez. Remember, Duran was supposed to fight McCallum, but then he let him strip him. Got stripped instead of McCallum was his #1 contender, WBA at junior middleweight, and Duran gave the belt up. He let him strip him at Fort Hearns, right? And see what happened to him against Hearns. Maybe he should have fought McCallum, but yeah. They had to say the hands of stones duck too. Oh, yeah. All the Four Kings did a little ducking. None of these guys on the records. Why not? Not just Wilfred Benitez. That's a good question. Why not? They all fought right in the middle of those divisions all the Four Kings was running up and down through. Yep. The Lone Star Cobra, Donald Curry. Anybody know why none of these guys ain't on the Four Kings records? Now, no fighter on this list was as highly touted and more shrouded in mystery than Donald the Lone Star Cobra Curry. In 1983, Donald Curry, whose real name is Donald Sample, won the WBA welterweight title that Ray Leonard vacated after his first retirement. After a rematch with Marlon Starling, whom he had previously defeated, he annexed the IBF title to his resume. In 1985, after beating Milton McCrory, Curry became the first undisputed welterweight champion, right? But Sugar Ray Leonard had done it against Hearns. Now, after this great achievement, Curry's career began to go on a roller coaster ride. On September 27th, 1986, Curry loses the title to Lloyd Honeyghan, a fighter that Curry was a 5-1 favorite against coming in. And leading up to that fight, personal problems as well as trouble making the 147-pound weight limit would see Curry suffer the first loss of his career. And then in the year 1987 would prove to be a trying one in the life and career of Donald Curry. On April 6th, he would sue Sugar Ray Leonard and Leonard's attorney, Mike Traynor, claiming that they conspired to keep him from fighting Marvin Hagler for the middleweight title, right? Wow. That same year, Curry challenged legendary Mike McCallum for the WBA junior middleweight title. Now, Donald Curry was a 2-1 favorite to beat McCallum. When the bell rang, he showed why he was favored. He took control of the fight from the onset and was ahead on the scorecards after 4 rounds, right? But in the 5th, he was put down by a picture-perfect left hook. Yep. And that was the second loss of his career. Lone Star Cobra would hold a grudge towards Sugar Ray Leonard for some time, prompting him to call Sugar Ray. When asked if he would fight Curry, Leonard responded, "I'd prefer to settle in court." Wow. Sugar Ray said he would prefer to settle in court. And the last one was the body snatcher, Mike McCallum, on the list of the insurgents from the 80s. Yeah. You see these guys. How come none of these guys on the Four Kings resume? Only Benitez, the only one. The rest of them is strangely missing. McCallum, Curry, Julian Jackson, Marlon Starling, all of them. McCallum, Curry, Starling, Julian Jackson. Benitez is the only one on there. And Michael Nunn. They called McCallum the body snatcher. Right? Like I say, he was scheduled to, he was Duran's, not scheduled, he was Duran's mandatory. And Duran vacated the title instead of facing him. Going to say, let me fight Hearns, I'll come back and face him. No, WBA said, no, you fight him now. That's your mandatory. Duran let him strip him. The hands of stone. So I don't know what that was about. But Hearns was the big money fight, but still. Hearns wasn't going nowhere. You could have fought your mandatory, then fought Hearns. Right? It was both Four Kings. Right? But there you have it. Those are just some insurgents through the kingdom. Forgotten fighters of the 1980s. So everybody have a happy Memorial Day. Enjoy the cookout. And we're gonna get ready to make like a tree and leave. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Still got a big week of boxing history in front of us. It's just starting out. Tomorrow we're gonna talk about some of the heavyweights of the 90s, like the big three, Lewis, Bolt, and Holyfield. Okay? Heavyweights of the 90s tomorrow on Cast Sport. And the profile Friday is going to be Marco Antonio Barrera, the fourth king of the 2000s. You know, Pacquiao, Eric Morales, Barrera, and who was the other one? Marco Antonio Barrera, Manny Pacquiao, Eric Morales, and Juan Manuel Marquez. How could I forget Juan Manuel Marquez? And all those guys fought each other. Okay. That's why they more those Four Kings than this Hank Devin, Tio, and Ryan Garcia. Only 2 fights out of the whole combination. Out of these Pacquiao, Marquez, Morales, and Barrera, 13 fights. Only one possible combination didn't fight. I think that was Morales and Marquez. Everybody fought everybody. Friday, Marco Antonio Barrera. We already did the other 3, so we might as well do Barrera, right? Yeah, that's Friday. Thursday is Washington, D.C. Boxing in the States. Not a state, but yeah, we're going to do Washington, D.C. because it's got a good boxing history. And some good boxers came from D.C. So yeah, this week is Washington, D.C. Okay. And we're going to have some kind of boxing history win. I don't know what it is yet. Okay. Let me see. I don't even know if there's still coming on. It is a holiday. This guy's asked me, was I going on there? I said, why not? I'm sitting right in here where I do the show from. Why would I not go on? Right? I would just be sitting here looking at the laptop for 2 hours, wishing I had went on. So I came on, you know. I'm trying to get 1,000 and down. I done went, man, I was at 912 And this morning I was at 9/11. I just pulled it up. I was at 9/11. And right in front of my eyes, it went back to 9/12. I watched it go from 11 to 12. I was getting ready to say I lost one, and I sit right here and watched it go from 9/11 to 9/12. So hey, we need 88 more to get to 1,000. Oh, what did they impact? Oh my God. I was trying to see what's going on over at Destiny Box before we go. I don't see a thumbnail. Oh, man, that was crazy. I said, I see you live. Somebody's live. That's me. I'm so alive. I said, Just Dude's live. That's me. That's what my story in is live. For a few more minutes. Let me see. I appreciate y'all spending part of your holiday with me today. Hope you enjoyed the show. Back with some more boxing history tomorrow. I don't see a thumbnail for Just Dude for today. So. But we'll be back tomorrow with some more boxing history, okay? If it's Monday through Friday at 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Okay? Everybody have a good afternoon. Enjoy your Memorial Day. Appreciate y'all 1,000%.